Hello.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for being here.
So do we speak which language? Oh, sorry, there's a lot of funny lights. I am outside because my mother is 97 and she sings a lot, so problem.
Yes.
Okay, like that. Good. So we speak in English?
Yeah. I think it's better, yes.
Okay. Whatever.
English is better because there are Spanish people, Mexican people.
Okay, how many of friends are there?
So now we are only 4 of us, but I hope that some other people is going to come. And anyhow, I'm going to record it, so it's going to be viewed after.
Okay.
For those
Okay.
who are not here.
Voila,
So
voila.
you must know Kohali already. Danny
Yes.
is Brazilian, so
Okay.
doesn't speak French. And then Santiago is Mexican.
Hello.
Okay. Hello, Santiago. Wow. What is on the back? Oh, some mask or something.
Masks. Yes.
Ooh la la. Ooh la la.
It's my mother's office.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so please first tell me, while we have little time, about the course itself.
So the course itself is, so we are trying to bring to bring the people to a level where they can speak Tibetan fluently, so they can access teachers and Khenpos who usually are not involved with translating.
I see.
At least for most of the people. So during the course is split in 2 halves. The first half is only for Tibetan, first spoken Tibetan and Dharma in Tibetan.
Mm-hmm.
That will cover all the studying Dharma, having we're wanting to use the Sheja Kunkyabze. I heard at some point that Shechen Sheda was using it in Tibet right after Jamgon Control Lojitayi had composed it or something like that. So it looks like something good to have a general idea of all the vehicles, all the different contexts, and etc.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that we want to put also is, like John has proposed us to use Mipan, which is Kenju, to have more focus on the vocabulary and the definitions of terms, etc.
Of course, yes. Yeah.
Yes. So this part of the training will hopefully bring the people to have the same kind of understanding of someone in the Sheda that reached the 2nd or 3rd year, where he is able to listen to any Sheda teaching like normally, like in any Tibetan Sheda, and be autonomous to kind of read and check all the commentaries and these kind of things. Of course, always listen to or rely on a Khenpo or someone more learned to have the final understanding, but at least to have this level. So
and how long is the curriculum supposed to be for the? I mean, tentatively to start.
5 years.
Wow.
5 years. Yes.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what should I tell? What tell me? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So this is the first half of the training, and the second half is looking at training in our own languages, because at least like Jim Kenzer Matthieu was saying, we should be able to write in a way that is publishable, that people feel that it's well written. And of course, then we try to also bring in the kind of techniques and knowledge that we find in translation schools. So these 2 parts are covered in the afternoons.
Yeah, so it reminds me, Charles Baudelaire, the wonderful French poet, he got a job to teach English. He was desperate to find a job, but he didn't speak English. So the first week he said, let's speak French with English accent. So something like that. So we can start speaking English or Spanish with that Tibetan accent, Kampa accent.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so yes.
Yeah, that's most of it. Yeah, that's so at the end of 5 years, then we hope that yes. So at the end of 5 years, what we hope to do is that we are able to translate with the help of a Khenpo on one side and with the help of someone to help with the target language. So This is what we have done during the first 2 months of the pilot project in this spring, 2000 spring. We had a Kempo that explains every single syllable in the text that we're going to translate.
Okay.
Then after, like I was the interpreter, so I listen to it, I take notes of what the point of view, the explanations, etc. of the Kempo. Then I re-explain to him in Tibetan to make sure that I understood everything. So at that point, his understanding should be in my brain. And after I bring that, and of course, if there's something that I'm missing, he tells me that, at least for that one page, his understanding of that one page. Then after I explain all of it to the...
So the students are not there when you have this exchange with the Kempo?
No, but it's all recorded, so maybe after we can go back to it.
Yes, sure, of course. Okay.
And so after I explain it to the trainee, and so at the end of 5 years, there's no need to have two persons. It will merge into one single.
Yeah.
And after that, and then we make one first draft translation that brings all the meaning without being well written, literal translation. Then after we make another version of it, which is well written. And then we show it to someone who is very good in French, English, or Portuguese, or Spanish.
Yeah, yeah.
And then after, ideally, someone else take the translation who has not read the Tibetan yet and translate it to the same Kempo in spoken Tibetan.
Wow, that's tricky.
That's tricky. And then after the Kempo is able to tell whether everything is there, if something is missing or not, if there's additions or missing things.
Okay.
And then after that, then he gives last kind of remarks.
That last step, I never heard of doing that, but anyway.
Yes.
Well, it's very interesting. It must be very difficult.
Challenging. Yes. Yeah. I did that, and then one of the things that the Kempo said is, "Oh, actually, what you translated is my explanation. It's not what the text says."
I see.
So then he clarifies things and puts things well. And then once that is done, then we kind of fine tune, and then after it's done.
Yeah.
And I presented that to Khenchen Pema Sherab, and he was saying, "Oh, okay. So if you do it that way, then we'll have the assurance, we'll have the guarantee that everything is well there. There's nothing missing or added from the point of view of the meaning, of course."
I see. Yeah. And that in that process, there is no, you don't envisage having the part of someone, like the role that plays someone like Kempo Sonam or Tuden Jimba, who is good enough, being a Tibetan, to judge of the translation.
Yes, yes.
Because that's looks a little bit easier than translating back. I mean, I don't think I would be able to do that, but anyway, it's an interesting challenge.
Interesting challenge, yes.
If you manage to do that, then wow, something. Okay.
It's true. We have tried. I mean, like there's one French translator, the one who is translating Karmapa now. His Tibetan is not that fluent. I mean, he's not like a native Tibetan, but it's quite okay. He finished the Shera in Sherabling, and he managed more or less to make himself understood, but it was still a challenge for him.
I see.
And for Ngauntini and me, for my brother and me, it was okay. And then I tried other people who came from Ranjung Yeshe, and they had trouble with that last part. So it's true, it's difficult. Yeah, it's not
difficult.
Easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think the reason we are trying to do that is people like Tubden Jimba or Kempo Sonam are rather rare, difficult to find.
Yes, I think they might come more often now, but they're quite rare still. Yeah. Okay, so then what do you want me to do?
Then we'd like to hear about your experience as a translator, because obviously you're not you trained in a period that was completely different than ours.
Yes.
And you have also all this experience of translating for His Holiness, for Khenser Moche, and all these great masters. So would like to hear about.
Yes, I'm the donkeys who's trailing the big stallions. Anyway, so. But I think my example is not a good example, because it's probably everything that you should not do. No, it's true. Well, at the beginning, possibly, but after that, it was a little bit like totally improvised. Anyway, let me tell you briefly the little story. So I met my root teacher, Kangyo Rinpoche, in 1967. So of course, that time, not only I didn't speak Tibetan, but I hardly speak any English to start with. So I spoke German, Greek, Latin, so that didn't help. So anyway, Tuku Pema Rinpoche was there, so some basic understanding. So I came back many times to visit Kangyo Rinpoche, 6 or 7 times between 1967 and the end of 72, when I decided to live there in Darjeeling. And I spent 7 years without going anywhere in Darjeeling. So in the beginning, the first 2-3 years, I asked Kangyo Rinpoche, should I learn Tibetan? And he said at that time, he said, well, and I was engaged in finishing my studies and PhD and all that. He said, there are many, many interesting things, and you might get distracted. So better now, considering the time you have in your hand, you focus on practice. So I did that, basically until I settled in Darjeeling in end of 72. So I was even translating, writing down in phonetics some of the daily prayers and carefully writing them and, making photocopies for others and things like that, but no idea what it means. So anyway, then in Darjeeling, there was already quite a few Western students, like you spoke of John Canty and Steve Getting, now who are really wonderful translators. And there was a few others. And some of them had already learned the Tibetan alphabet, but they start teasing me, you don't even know the Tibetan alphabet. How shameful. I said, well, let's see. Then at some point, Kangyo Rinpoche told me, now it's good to learn Tibetan, because that will help you to clarify some doubts and hesitation. So I started. And so my way of starting was to write down some prayers, like say the Samantabhadra prayer or thing, in a big ledger. I would calligraphed, and big Indian ledger, they're big books. And one line I would write the Tibetan as much as I could copy it. And then line below, I will look at the meaning of the words in the Das dictionary. And then I will try to make a sentence, things like that. So some of the prayer already were translated. There was a prayer book with Tuku Rinpoche and Kid Doman translated, so I could also check with that. So I was doing that and asking very few questions sometimes to Kangyo Rinpoche's family or other persons. So I did that for a while. Then I thought, okay, let's try something more ambitious. So I was starting to understand a little bit. So I read the advice for mountain retreat, the Richard Lapcha of Dijum Rinpoche. And I thought, wow, this is not very big. This looks so wonderful. So I started to try. And then that time I started, asking questions in English to Tuku Pema, his family, and Tuku Tendrup, and whoever was available who could speak English who were in Darjeeling. It's a very short text, I think 15 pages. It took me quite some time. And eventually I published it. John looked at it for the English. I didn't sign it. I said something like Wandering Vagabond or something. And I printed in Delhi, and it has been going around. And there's a few like that which I translated anonymously. So, but still I didn't speak Tibetan very much. So, and also I must confess that I had the grammar of Jacques Bacot, but I find it so boring and difficult that this very bad example, but just open and close the grammar. I did the same with French grammar, so don't follow on my path. There was a truck in Nepal where they said, don't follow me, I'm lost too. So this, I'm telling you everything that is not a good example. Nevertheless, some kind of good karma that after Kangyo Rinpoche passed away, the frescoes of the monastery there needed to be painted, and a wonderful artist, Concho Ladrepa, who was quite young there, he was a student of Gen Chagyal, who was a great painter who had sought refuge in Rumtek Monastery from the Karma Gadri tradition. And Khyentse Rinpoche had sent him. His family were student of Khyentse Rinpoche. So Khyentse Rinpoche sent him there, and he spent 1 year learning with Tragyal, so he was a fast learner. So then Khyentse Rinpoche told him to come and make the frescoes. So I didn't know how to draw, but I can put painting. So he drew the lines, and then I would put the colors, and then he would draw, and all the degradés and everything. I must have done thousands of flowers degradé. And basically I was alone with him. At some point, Martin Watten, the monk who's passed away now, helped me for a while. But the good thing, although we spent 6 months doing that, and I learned a lot how to put colors, still doesn't know how to draw, is that he didn't speak a word of English, and we were all day long together. So that was the real breakthrough for my spoken Tibetan. So I owe him that. And we had great fun together. And we were sitting on the scaffoldings. And so I started to learn the basic names of the colors. You know, they use different names than ordinary ones for painting. Like green, they say pang, and the blue, they say ting. It's related to the name of the minerals that were found in Tibet that used to be the substance from which they make the colors. So because they were natural colors, so instead of naming the name of the color itself, the name came from mostly the pigment that were used. Anyway, thanks to that, I started speaking Tibetan. So then, of course, it was easier to ask questions. And I was not by no means a full-time translator. I mean, I was doing all kinds of things, mostly retreats. But slowly I started translating a little bit text and this and that. So then, what else? So I translated a few pieces of advice, prayers. Some of them I lost, and so like that. Then, actually, my translating career started more like an interpreter. So after Khyentse Rinpoche passed away and I finished 7 years in Darjeeling, Khyentse Rinpoche was giving the Rinchen Terze teaching in Dehradun. That was at that time 63 volumes of all the termas, the rediscovered treasures that were collected throughout Tibet by Khyentse Wangpo and Jamgo Kongtrul and put in writing by Jamgo Kongtrul. So there was 4 months, and at that time I could speak sort of, okay, Tibetan, and there was no one else. So I started, so sometime in the evening, even though he has taught all day long in the temple, Khyentse Rinpoche would give teaching to some Westerners on some Tibetan text, and short ones, like Mipam Rinpoche's Chegom Koloma, the investigation, the wheel of investigating the mind, and few things like that. So then I would translate orally after he has, usually after he has taught, or we recorded and listened to the recording, I used to translate. So things like that. And so then, as it was getting something that I used to do very often. So then at some point, since I was recording almost every teaching that Khyentse Rinpoche gave. I think in the end, I ended up almost nearly 400 hours of recording, which are available now. And I had this very old tape recorder. Sometimes there was someone like in Dehradun who had a very nice one, so he would lend it to me. So I accumulated this collection, and then I felt that maybe I could translate them into writing. So then from the tapes, I did a few, mostly my first translation were oral teachings of Khyentse Rinpoche. And so like the wish fulfilling jewel, the Longchen Nyingtik Guru Yoga, then the excellent path to enlightenment, the short Ngondro of Khyentse Wangpo, and then there were the Tokta Parsum Gewetam of Patrul Rinpoche, the Heart Treasure of the Enlightened One. So there was a series of books. I think I did about 8, 10, almost 10 of them, which now found in the collected translation of Khyentse Rinpoche's teaching in English, like Shambhala published. But we all published them various times in India, and then by session publication, it was just beginning, and then Shambhala and Snow Lion, this and that. So it was mostly, yes, from oral translation. And then I would, since my English or my French not terribly good, I would ask friends like John Canty, and sometimes it would take a long time. I remember the Heart of Compassion, which is the Khyentse Rinpoche's teaching on the Gyatse Lalen, the 37-fold practice of the Bodhisattva. I think John might have kept it 15 or 20 years. And each year he would say, no, I will do it for sure. So because he was so busy, and he said, the secret is to throw away all deadlines. So anyway, like that. And Patrul Rinpoche's life also, it was took very long time. So at one point, I thought to translate some text also. And my idea was to translate because Khyentse Rinpoche gave detailed explanation on the Khenpo Yönten Gyamso's commentary on the Jigme Lingpa's Yönten, the Treasury of Precious Quality. That's, depending on edition, is 2 very large volumes in Tibet at Gemang Monasteries, wood blocks. And in the Nima Kama of the Rinpoche is 3 volumes. So quite big. And Khenpo Pema Sherab in France taught that for 13 years, 20 days every year. So it's really a major teaching. And Khyentse Rinpoche would teach from that and from a shorter commentary by Sopo Tendar, who was initially a Gelugpa master, but also disciple of Dodrup Jimmy Trille herself. So he wrote a commentary, which is wonderful in 1 volume. So Khyentse Rinpoche would teach every day to Ramjam Rinpoche for 20 minutes from both those texts. And since I was there, so I received all those teachings for over a year and recorded that. There's, I think, 140 tapes. So then I conceived the wish to translate those. It's a huge work. Might have taken me, because I was not doing that only, like 10 years. I don't know, but anyway. But then when I mentioned to Khyentse Rinpoche, he was quite very happy, but he said, well, the second part, they deal with the Vajrayana, then you translate, but it's only for people who did 3 years retreat. So I said, it's very wonderful. But then, spending 10 years, what else could I do? Yes. Maybe I thought, well, let's see. So then everyone sort of from different sides, Tibetans and Gene Smith himself. So, and Khyentse Rinpoche was very much in favor of translating life stories and basic important teachings. So everyone, like Gene Smith, would tell me that the most inspiring biography he had ever read was that of Sherpa Tsodru Ronral. So I never heard of him before very much, except I heard vaguely the existence of the flight of the Garuda, but nothing was translated then. Then same thing I was told by another Tibetan master, and few people keep on saying that. So I start looking at it, and the Tibetan is not incredibly difficult. It's extremely beautiful and it's extremely inspiring. So I thought, wow, that's maybe what I should do. So then, of course, it's almost like, I don't know, I forgot, but something like 700 pages or more in Tibetan. So actually the English complete translation is 1,000-page, 2 columns by SUNY Press first, and then Snow Lion. And so it was a big job. So I thought, I'm not going to finish that. So I enrolled a few friends like Eric Pema Kunsang, Annie Lodre, Jacob Leslie, Marilyn Silverstone. I said, would you do a draft? We do together. So they did a draft out of 15 chapters, I think probably 7 chapters. And then, of course, there are other things to do. So I decided so I was very grateful of that. But, it was just draft. So I took the whole thing again. And then I worked. I finished the other chapters. Then I revised the whole thing carefully. I have it everything was read by Marilyn Silverstone. She spoke very good Tibetan, and she has a very critical eye. And then I asked thousands of questions. And that's where the spoken Tibetan came in. Because, it was a lot of colloquial from Amdo. And also he traveled to other places. So there was a lot of name of places and text from all the different schools of Tibetan Buddhism, because he was a very non-sectarian teacher. Yes, student and teacher. So fortunately, thanks to Khyentse Rinpoche, there was always, Rinpoche would constantly give teaching, not only to few people, but sometimes to hundreds. I mean, every few months, there was a major gathering with teaching. And there would be, 50 Khenpos and Tulkus of coming from everywhere from Tibet. So if I had something about Amdo, I could go to one person. If I need something about Kailash area, I would find someone. So likewise, thanks to being able to ask, I was able to clarify many things. And the way I would translate, which I always did and I still do, is to read the text carefully, of course, and make a list of questions. And I should not say even now, because I don't consider that I have a full mastery by far. But anyway, even with, say, certain numbers of years, 40 years of doing amateur translation, if I'm not sure, absolutely 100%, the slightest hesitation, I make a question. And I think it's absolutely a duty to ask someone. I don't trust if I have the slightest doubt, even I have a good option, and so very often it's the right one, but unless I'm 100% sure, I would ask. Or just check. And when I don't understand, I ask. So then, of course, with time, I found people who are really good at this, answering those kind of questions, who have a vast knowledge, great understanding of the text, who have a sort of encyclopedic knowledge of places and people. So a few of them, they're quite rare, but there are few among the Tibetans. So like that, I did that, and then I did few other things, but it was really sort of, on the go. And, 50 years is not a reasonable curriculum for anyone to learn how to translate. So you should go faster, obviously. But me, that was not my main objective. So it came along, and I'm still learning. So because, spoken language also, that's how I became an interpreter for French for the Dalai Lama, because he was in Paris once, and when he was translating, there was in Tibetan English and English to French, and I was there. He said, "Why do you want to translate?" So boom, I was suddenly promoted, and that just happened in Paris. But then he came to Dordogne to teach the Bodhisattva, and I was not supposed to translate at all for 10 days. And then, there was his translator, and someone was going to do, not me, from English to French. And then he came to visit the tent the day before, and he said, "Who is translating?" I said, "Well, you're a translator," and it would be French. He said, "No, this guy can do it because he speaks French." So without any preparation, I had to do 10 days of translation for His Holiness. And then sometime some Central Tibetan colloquial expression, I got a little in trouble, but basically sort of managed. So you see, it was really sort of a very, very slow, organic type of learning. So there's not much an example because it's a lifetime of slowly learning and doing things by passion and having a quite unique access to, great scholars, great masters. Oh yes, and Khyentse Rinpoche because even before wanting to translate the Treasure of Precious Quality and Khenpo Yongas, I would ask him every time he was giving teachings, I would read the text again, take notes, and ask him plenty of questions. So I have a lot of notes, which I then gave to Woolston and Elena when they did the translation of the shorter commentary of Kangyo Rinpoche of 1 volume. So of course, it's the same root text and the same subject. So those notes were very useful to them because Khyentse Rinpoche was elucidate many concepts. So, and I did record many of those question answers. So that's kind of process. And again, still now, recently I did when I was in Pemake last year with Khenpo Pema Sherab and Khenpo Sonam, I thought there's a very great Drupaka Gyu master called Gyalwa Gotsampa. He's like Milarepa. And I remember that Khyentse Rinpoche, when he was giving the lung for the Tripitaka, the Kangyur in Bhutan, in Bumtang in, I think, 1983, he was second by Sengetrapa, Sentra Rinpoche, who was a Drupaka Gyu master and an Nyingma teacher also, because he had received before from Khyentse Rinpoche. So Khyentse Rinpoche would give in the morning, Sentra Rinpoche in the afternoon. Then Khyentse Rinpoche wanted to receive from Sentra Rinpoche writings of Gyalwa Gyatsampa. There's a few volumes were available. So I read some of it, and it was so wonderful, like on the pure vision and on compassion, devotion, very sort of unusual. So I started to, when I was in Permaculture, that's a good place to translate, take some pure vision, just a 20-page. But then, Gyatsampa was from 13th, I think, beginning of 13th century or beginning of 14th century. And from Te, which is another sort of dialect. Of course, he was in classical Tibetan, but inevitably there are some expressions which reflect his time and origin. So I guess I end up with plenty of questions. So I keep on asking them to Khenpo Pema Sherab, to Khenpo Sonam, and to a few others. There's a specialist of Gyatsampa in Nepal. So there's short text, but plenty of questions. So I think this is something that kind of synergy with the scholar should go all the way, and we never have time where we don't need that. So that's what I feel. And otherwise, if you some funny story that Khenpo Mangya Rinpoche told me about sort of early Western scholars who came a little bit, to Kalimpong in 1960s and others. And, they were trying their best, but they were sometimes asking things about history and lineage to great teachers, but they were a little bit overconfident about the way of translating. And therefore, it gives incredibly funny thing. Like the term Sangtal in Tibetan, which means we can translate different ways, like unobstructed or something like that. But in fact, the real etymology and explanation is Sangkama Tal Tujong, is something that penetrates all the solid reality and reduce it into dust. So it's about unobstructedness of the vision of the great perfection. Okay. So Sang also, you could mistranslate as copper, and Tale is also a plate in sort of broken Tibetan. So the guy had translated copper plate. So of course, not quite that. So what to do? That means we need to rely on, expert and it's an endless process of learning. So that's the story of the donkey. So that's it. Voila.
Thank you very much. It's great. Yeah.
That's it. So any question? Fine.
Yes. I found it interesting because here again, the first, what Kangyo Rinpoche's instruction to you was, okay, you may have some doubts to clarify. So maybe learning Tibetan would be helpful. So he already at that time, he didn't tell you.
Well, he was thinking about studying text, yes, because there is explanation about the text. So those doubts about some terms, some teachings, it would be good to study commentaries on the Dharma. That's what he meant, yes.
Okay, yeah. So he was not telling you that you should learn Tibetan to later become translator. That was not.
Oh no, not at all.
No, not at all.
He had never said. Khenpo Rinpoche never said a word about translation to me, and Khenpo Rinpoche, he told me, yes, that would be good to translate Namtars and Ngondro teachings and things like that. So that was this recommendation.
Okay. Yes. So yes, if some of the participants have questions.
Matthieu, hi.
Oh, yes.
Nice to see you.
Where are you? Wait a minute.
I'm in Lisbon. Oh, you mean you probably in your screen?
Yeah, I had to move the screen. It's very, very strong. So anyway, I'll put the sound down for me. That's
okay.
Okay, go on.
I was just a question about what you just said about when you're not sure. And I mean, most of the text, for example, that we're translating at present, even when working from the Tibetan, most of the times they have already been translated. So when the meaning that we interpret from the text matches the existing translation, we usually trust the interpretation.
Yeah.
So you see where I'm getting at. This can be, of course. So of course, as we progress and we learn more about the subject and the language, of course, we get more critical of also, we can understand more if there's identify more easily
Yes.
if there's something in the references that we're using that might not be accurate. But yeah, but it's just
there's one
just
thing I
something-
forgot to mention, which I think very, very important, is I think we should read a lot of text. And I don't see so many apprentice translators reading, not to translate, just to read. And I remember, because of Kensei Rinpoche, he said, oh, he gave me some, he would praise a text or something. And I found recently all those small notebooks, very, very tiny notebooks I used to get. And I would read something, a big commentary, say like the Yangdak Sangre, the commentary on the Yangdak Heruka, which is like all about Kirim and all that. And every page, I would write down the topics. So, okay, page 1, from line 1 to 3, it says something about that. So the whole book I will write down. And I have 20 of the small notebooks. And then it's easy to find one particular subject. I just look and I find where to look for the explanation. So I think that was enormously helpful. And I had no intention, and I still have no intention to translate those texts. But what it brings is that, say, when I hear sometimes some people asking translation, I think, oh, I think it means that. Well, it can mean that if you look at the text. But if you have read it many times and you know, okay, in such context, this word or this expression just cannot mean that. That's not what authors say. That's not the way people speak. So you could interpret that literally. Doesn't look wrong, but that's simply not what the way this word or this expression is used. So you know that something doesn't work. And it's probably because nobody ever used it in that way, even though it's technically right. So that, I think, also is something that I'm not sure is maybe overlooked a little bit by translators. I mean, some of them read a lot, but not everyone. And that would be one advice I would give, is to read without further goal of translating. And then about, translation in different language. Well, that's my own opinion, but I don't think it's very useful. But, well, I think that there are so many wonderful texts. I mean, that's very personal opinion, and I know many people don't agree, but that's the way I think. There's so many incredibly important texts that I will never translate something that's already translated in any language, because it's there and it can be improved. But translate something new if you can speak Tibetan, or even when you are learning to translate something completely new. And then, of course, you can improve it with asking questions to a scholar. And if you are not very good, like me, and my native language or any other language, in fact, then you work with someone who can polish the poetry and everything. And then to put in other language, I think the best use of time is to give it to someone who is a very good bilingual translator, very fluent, literary good, and make the translation, and then check with the original translator. If there's original translator, if you can understand, like French, English, you understand both, and you check and you see whether, there's something wrong there. Or the translator goes back to you again and again, and you check together and you precise things. But I think that's, in the end, that's where we'll get more and more text translated. So unless the translation is really messed up and really no good at all, and it happens, then I think my personal opinion is to translate new things, because there's so many anyway. But of course, also for many of us, we are students of great teachers, and they give us some instruction on what is the best text to translate. So that's a different situation. But for those who are sort of independent and loose atoms, there are few, then I think, voila, that's his small idea.
Yes, I agree. I agree very much, because Khyentse Rinpoche was telling us that only about 1% of the Tibetan literature of texts and commentaries is translated. So there's such a great wealth that we could use and translate.
And you know, even in the beginning, you are not so good. That's why you become better. I remember when Pemangya Rinpoche asked to Christian Bruyère, our late friend, to translate Kun San Lame Shalom, you know, words of my perfect teacher. Christian that time didn't speak Tibetan. Only a few things. He was just learning. And he said, but I don't know Tibetan. He said, well, you will learn while doing it. So because he was very hard worker, he did. But, you know, he learned the hard way, let's say. Yeah. So I think you're very lucky to have a system, to have teacher, to have courses. And yeah, that's wonderful.
Any other question?
I have one. It would be apart from developing like the language skills in Tibetan and in the language we want to translate in, what else do you think? What other things would be essential for people who want to translate, to learn?
Well, you
or
know, yeah.
That.
You know, I think it's very hard to have all skills. So I gave up on being a good French writer and English writer or anything like that. I mean, I'm okay, but not really good. So I ask help to someone who can read again and improve my French instead of being stubborn and trying to make it all the way to the end. So I think collaboration is very important. So everyone has different mixture of qualities. There are very few translators who are good at both. There are some, you know, obviously. If you look at Woolston and others, there are some who are fantastic master of their own language, and or Steve or others, and who can also have very good mastery of Tibetan. But it's quite rare. And if not, I should not discourage us. We should know, you know, how to cooperate. And also, you know, to have, in the ancient time where we had more times, I used to give my translation to check to somebody. Now I mostly ask questions, but I remember very well for Shapkar and everything, how Marlene read everything. And she did find quite a lot of things. She was quite picky. So, and she loved to do that because she was not so busy. And so it was very useful. And I think at Pamakara Translation Group, they had that as a rule in the beginning, that at least another translator should go through. I don't know to which extent they are still doing, but it's quite a good practice if we can. But this, again, takes time, and you need someone also who knows enough, who is willing to do that. And people are not getting so busy and have so little time, and also the old translators are getting older. So the time is become the main problem. So anyway, I think it is good, but it's not totally indispensable. I mean, we can, if you really have been serious and persistent enough to ask questions where you are not 100% sure, then I think it's reasonably okay. For me, I mean, at least, that's what I do.
Matthieu?
Yeah.
And you were saying that first Khyentse, was it Khyentse Rinpoche or Khyentse Rinpoche sent you to practice, and then you started learning Tibetan. What is it, the importance of understanding the text related to the practice or not?
Well, at that time, there was no text to practice. I was getting spoken instruction that Toko Rinpoche would translate. So I was not using text as such, except the Mondro or a few things that were, yes, available. So, yeah, so for practice, I mean, most of the teachers, like nowadays, they say if the translation is good, then you can see they do many things in French or English or there. I think the practice, you need to understand what you are doing. The translation has to be correct and you have to have received the proper instruction, then you need to practice. So possibly it is less crucial and it's mostly useful, I think, if you, well, for me, I have a hard time reading a prayer or a sadhana in French or English. I just read the Tibetan and I sort of listen when they speak in French. But, you know, that's my professional deformation. But, no, people are quite comfortable with that. I think it's mostly when you want to read commentaries, explanation, learn more, different commentaries on one particular practice. So then you need to read Tibetan, yes. But, you know, I think the teachers now, they have a clear opinion about, you know, do sadhana in Western languages and all that. So I think they know better. Yes, I don't know. Just me, I'm used to read Tibetan. So.
I think the question was more how much practice influences the translation.
Huh?
I think the question was more how much having practiced something influences the way that you translate the same subject.
Well, you know, if you had like Jimmy Limpa, who was just by practicing they said the knots in this wheel in the throat got untied and he could write commentaries on, even with having learned a little bit. So not having a huge amount of textual learning. So that's exceptional. I think for the practice, if you understand very, very clearly what you need to do, you understand the meaning of the practice, you have got some explanation. I think main thing is to experience, and then the language I don't think is that crucial. But of course, words have a different taste in the original language, and they evoke more, you know, because they have layers of meanings. So obviously, in translation, you choose something, and then it has also a host of meaning in Western language, each word, but not the same ones. So when you read in Tibetan, then you get the full nuances and the other meanings as well included, but they don't, even the translation is correct, then all what it evokes in Tibetan and the references and how you have read it in other texts, then doesn't come in the translation because there's no such thing. So it's some kind of empowerment. But I think for practice, you know, once you have a sadhana and you do a visualization or recitation and all that, if everything is clear, then it's your own experience and devotion and everything. So I'm not sure it's a very absolute obstacle for practice. It's mostly when you want to read commentaries and yeah, I don't know. I have no opinion and it also doesn't matter.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other question?
I have one question. Matthieu, what would be the minimum Dharma knowledge that a translator should possess before starting to translate? For example, to know very well Bodhicharyavatara or Vinaya or Abhidharma, what would be the minimum?
Well, as I said, you know, my example is no good, but I didn't have any experience at all. I just started writing lines and writing the word to word and writing the meaning, and I grew, and I became more experienced in translation, and along with that, I started to read text, so it was all coming together. So, but as I mentioned, reading a lot later on became very incredibly useful to have a sense of the meaning that came not just by reading one particular text, but because I had seen that expression or that thing in other contexts, and therefore it made more sense. So in that sense, the more you read, the more I think you're quite sure of what you do. I mean, I remember someone like G. Smith, he was not a translator, but when he was seeing an expression or everything, he had seen that about 50 times in other texts, and he could say where to find it. So therefore, he had very little hesitation about some colloquial or what it meant, because he has seen it many times and in different contexts. So then it became obvious, and there was little doubt about the meaning for him. So I think it's just part of having a greater general knowledge of Tibetan literature is, of course, very helpful for translating, but it comes with time and as you keep on reading.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just one question, Matthieu, if I may.
It's getting cold.
Okay. About collaborating with someone to edit your draft, let's call it, translation, after you've interpreted the Tibetan. How has that been working? Because if it's someone who is editing who doesn't have access to the Tibetan, they might be pulling in different directions from what you want.
Yeah, sure, but then you read it again, of course. So like, for instance, for prose, usually not too dangerous because, it just improve the grammar and the style, and really don't change much. I have this friend with the Shapka. I have a wonderful friend called Constance Wilkinson, and she was living in Nepal with her husband. And so she was extremely good at poetry. So for the prose, she will do minor change. The poetry, she would rewrite the poetry beautifully. So there, most of the time, the meaning was quite clear because Shapka writing is quite clear. But sometimes you say, no, that's not what it means. So we go back. So then you have to, of course, read it again and again and again. And that's necessary. And the same thing for, when you have the chance to be able to learn, to understand the second language. So when Shapka was translated into French, I didn't translate it into French, although I'm French, because I had done my work in English. I said, I'm not going to spend 6 months doing that in French. I thought this doesn't make sense. I better translate something else from Tibetan. So a friend of mine was a very good bilingual, Caris Busquet. She did the translation. And then the publisher didn't want the whole thing. So there's about 2/3 of the original and all the notes went off. And so anyway, it's a reduced version. So then I read it. Once he finished, I read it very carefully. And each time, I found out that each time there was something, I immediately jumped into my attention. When it was fluent and they said, no problem, then I knew it was right. Even I checked, this was right. When I had any problem, then I could see there was some kind of drift from the real meaning. So either I would check the Tibetan again or check my translation or whatever. And then, so like that, with some work, it still requires significant work, but not as much as translating it from scratch. So for me, I think that's the best way. You work in collaboration with the second translator, provided you know the language. And then if you don't know it, of course, then there's a problem. If it's translated in German, what can I do? So I just leave it like that and hope for the best. I have no idea. Some people say, oh, that translation in German is very good. So I say, oh, great. What can I do? No. Anyway, there's no way I can do anything. So, and I'm not going to work with every single translator, spending months that they translate back to me. No, thank you so much. No, I can't do that. Maybe. Well, at least if we get it right in 2 languages, that's already something. Voila. Okay.
Thank you very much.
That's fine. Okay. Anything? Last question? Before I freeze. Okay.
Can I ask
1,
something
2,
more broader?
Yes.
You have been living in a time where Buddhism came to the West and had an impact in the West in a way that it was not seen before.
Mm.
And it was also during this time that there has been more texts translated into Western languages. And I was thinking about this idea of interdependence and how things happen. And I would ask you if you feel there's something new that has come up in this kind of interdependence phenomena of Buddhism coming to the West at this time. That's it.
New in which way?
Because it's something really new, right? And also the fact that there is this new meeting of this language, Tibetan language, with Western languages. It's also a new phenomenon. And
yeah, but when you see Sanskrit, it doesn't look like anything like Tibetan. Zero. So that was also completely a new world. Then many Tibetan texts are in Mongol, nothing to do, absolutely zero similarity. And so, yeah, and also Sanskrit was translated into Chinese. So this has been going on for a long time. And of course, there was a lot of, criteria for the early Lotsawas. They said they had to be almost kind of fully realized, or having the vision of the Yidam, or at least be proficient in the 5 sciences, the traditional sciences. So we are far from that. So, well, yes, and then, in the beginning, there were also great masters like Trungpa Rinpoche who was speaking of transcreation. So, of course, he was directing the Nalanda Transmission Committee and sitting with them twice a week for whole afternoons. And it was an incredibly productive time. And at that time, the Nalanda Translation Group was the best. But at the same time, when he was translating some of his own sadhana, there's few which he translated himself, then it's not quite literal. So because he was transcreating, he was the author, so he could do. So we are not the author of any of those texts, so we cannot do this kind of thing. We have to be very faithful. So this is, in that sense, there was, you could say, something new. He rewrote some kind of a sadhana based on the original in a different language, slightly different enough, let's say. I've seen the Tibetan of one of them. But it was the source for both. So that's very exceptional. And so that's not happening, won't happen very often. So I don't know. I mean, I think the translation is, I'm not an expert in the science of translation. I heard that, there are some, when they had these meetings of translation organized by Tsatra, they invited a scholar who was a specialist of the science of translation and how he explained the incredible, depth of, going from one language and one culture to another. And it was very revealing. Many of them told me that, like Patrick Carré and Woolston. I have not studied that, but apparently it's certainly a very complex thing. And yes, it's never quite exactly the same. It cannot be. So I think we have to do the best we can to be authentic, to try to make in a little way that is appealing to read. But I think main thing is to convey the meanings in terms of what the teaching wants to say, without taking that as a license to put one's own fancies in it. But it, sometimes if you are absolutely too getting every syllable in, it becomes very hard to read. So what you want is to make sure that what the teacher wanted to say is there without making your own, inventions. So the balance is not always easy to find, but I don't know. I mean, I have no final recipe. I just try my best and getting slower and slower with time because of age. Voila. Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. I've been so happy that there is the new generation coming up as the old dinosaurs are dying one by one. And it's very, very encouraging. And I wish you good luck and to contribute wonderful text to the Western world and other languages. So it's absolutely fantastic. So, and also the fact that now thanks to our friend, is being sort of organized in a way that give you the possibility to have a in-depth training. So there are few similar, endeavors, and each of them seems to have different aspects and looks interesting. So this is incredibly encouraging that you are taking the next generations coming up. Otherwise, yeah, well, we are the old guys, and we were lucky because also we could ask many great teachers, but there are many also younger great scholars, and I'm sure this will continue. So thank you so much, and good luck, and hard work, and determination, and enthusiasm. And I'm sure you produce wonderful translations. So thank you for asking me to share this
Thank you so
view.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthieu.
No, his connection.
Thank you
seems
so
to be
much.
Not there anymore. Okay.
Thank you, Drupal, for organizing this.
Thank you, Drupal.
Thanks to you to be there.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you,
Otherwise, it
everybody.
would not have been possible. And yeah, let's hope that there will be more of these